Fourth grade friends, it is good to be with you all today. This is Miss Briggs, and I am so excited to share with you all a little bit more about non-renewable resources. We are going to be working through together today on the passage that you were given. So hopefully after this video, you're going to feel comfortable answering some of those questions, and you'll be able to have that help where you need it. So we are going to go ahead and get started. And first of all, the name of our passage was, What are non-renewable resources? And then we had 5 sections after that. So we had coal, oil and natural gas, fossil fuels, layers of soil, and rocks and minerals. We had 5 sections after our title. So when we know our sections, that's going to help us a little bit more as we're answering questions to know where we should go back to and look for answers. So thinking about some strategies that we can use to answer these questions. One strategy you can use is to scan those questions first and then read your passage fully after you know what the questions are asking. Another strategy you can use is to read the passage fully and answer the questions. You've already answered a lot of these questions based on passages. You know what works best for you, so whichever strategy that is, I would use that strategy. Okay, and then we also, for this passage, we had 11 short answer questions and then 1 multiple choice question. So we have 12 questions total, and some of them are really great questions. So we are going to go ahead and jump right in answering them or learning how to answer them. So the first question was, what are fossil fuels? And if I'm thinking back to my sections, and if I've already read my passage, I might think about the section fossil fuels, pro and con. And that's what I did when I was answering these questions. When I go to that section and I start reading, the section says, as sources of energy, there are some advantages to using fossil fuels. They are fairly easy to get out of the ground. They are easy to move from place to place. But after I started reading that, I realized it's not really telling me what fossil fuels are. It's really telling me what the pros and cons, or the benefits and disadvantages of fossil fuels are. So after I started reading that, I realized I should probably find another section that's going to tell me what the answer is in a better way. So that's why it's so important to go through and read the passage first before I go start answering my questions, because it doesn't really tell us what a fossil fuel is. But if I go back to the top of my passage where that title was, where it said, What are non-renewable resources? I remember that it said a fossil fuel is made from the remains of ancient plants and animals. Fossil fuels are oil, natural gas, and coal. These fuels began forming on Earth more than 300 million years ago. So that tells me a lot more about what fossil fuels are than the section about the pros and cons of fossil fuels. So that would probably be a better section to look at for answering this question. Okay, if you need to pause at any point during the video, you definitely can, but we are going to keep moving on through these questions, but stop where you need to and you can answer them, okay? All right, so number 2, how is coal used? So, again, I'm thinking about those sections. I think a really helpful section for me is going to be the section that's just called coal, right? So this section, when I went back and read, it says coal is the most common fossil fuel on Earth. Coal is formed from ancient swamp plants. The energy stored in coal is used mainly to make electricity. It is also used for heating. So I'm thinking to myself, did this tell me how coal is used? I think it did. So when you're going back and you're answering this question, you might say, coal is used for, and then you can tell what it is used for, because this section just gave you those answers. Okay, we're going to move on to number 3. Yep, there we go. It highlighted it for us, those uses of coal. So number 3, let me see if I can move my face. There we go. How were oil and natural gas formed? So thinking back to my sections, I'm thinking that I had a section called oil and natural gas? And I did. So when I look at that section, I'm seeing oil and natural gas are also fossil fuels. They are formed much like coal, but instead of swamp plants, they are made from animals and plants that lived in Earth's oceans. Over millions of years, heat and pressure changed the remains of these plants and animals into oil and natural gas. Did this tell me how it was formed? Okay, so if it did, then I can find that answer in the passage, I can reference my text, and then tell how oil and natural gas are formed. All right, let's go on to number 4. What are some of the benefits of using fossil fuels? So, a couple things to notice here. It's asking me for some benefits, not just one, so I want to include more than one benefit. Also, a benefit is usually a positive thing, right? So we might be looking for keywords like advantage, good, easy, better, cheaper. Maybe there will be other words that come up in our passage, but these are the things that we are looking for related to fossil fuels. So a good section for us to look at would be fossil fuels, pro and con. Remember, we looked there for another answer earlier. Didn't really give us what we were looking for one answer, but I do think that's probably a great place for us to look now. So again, we go back to our text always. We reference our text. And it says, as sources of energy, there are some advantages to using fossil fuels. They are fairly easy to get out of the ground. They are easy to move from place to place. They are often cheaper than other forms of energy. There are enough supplies now to meet people's needs at the present time. Okay, did that tell us why or what the benefits of using fossil fuels are? Okay, so take a minute, go ahead and answer that question. All right, moving on to number 5. What are some drawbacks to using fossil fuels? Okay, so again, I'm looking at some key words in this question, some and drawbacks. Some, again, means more than one, so I'm not going to just tell you one drawback, I'm going to tell you more than one. Also, a drawback is different than a benefit. It is a negative thing. So some keywords I might be looking for when I'm reading my passage could be disadvantage, problem, or harmful. And guess where we're going to look? We just looked at the advantages in this section, so now we're going to think about the drawbacks or disadvantages of using fossil fuels. And I want to see if you can use your text on your own from here on out. So I gave you some little passages up on the screen. Now I want you to use your text. I'm still going to help you with the sections that you could look in, but I want you to see if you can find that answer. So take a minute and go ahead and look at number 5. All right, number 6. Why can rich soil be considered a non-renewable resource? So I'm looking at my question. I notice it's asking me about rich soil being a non-renewable resource. So going to my text again, I'm looking at the section layers of soil. Okay, so I have the section up here. And I'm looking for why it might be a non-renewable resource, okay? So this one is a little bit tricky because it's telling you why it could be considered a renewable resource, and then it's telling you why it could be a non-renewable. So take a minute, read through that section, and think about and answer why you think rich soil could be considered a non-renewable resource. Okay, so looking here at the end of our section about layers of soil, it says, but some soil is lost because of erosion. When this happens, it takes a long time to be replaced. That is why soil can be thought of as non-renewable. So looking at that, thinking about how rich soil could be considered a non-renewable resource, this could help us find our answer there. Okay, let's go to number 7. So these questions, they are working on specific skills. So this one is helping us find the main idea of a section or a passage. So the main idea here that we're looking for is, why are minerals non-renewable resources? Now I'm going back, I'm thinking about my text, and I'm thinking which section probably has the answer. I'm thinking it'll probably be the section rocks and minerals because I'm looking for an idea about minerals, okay? So if I go back to rocks and minerals, thinking how are they non-renewable resources? So take a minute, go back to the rocks and minerals section and answer that question for number 7. Okay, so after you've done that, let's think about number 7. This is a way that you could probably start your answer. Minerals are non-renewable resources because, and then you'll tell why. We want to explain here and we want to strengthen our answer by giving a really solid reason. All right, so number 8 is a vocabulary question. Explain the difference between oil and coal. So here, I have to explain, I have to tell why, but I also have to identify a difference between two things. And in that case, those two things are oil and coal. Okay, so here, I'm not just going to be focusing on one section, I'm going to be focusing probably on 2. 2 of those helpful sections could be oil and natural gas, and then coal, because I'm looking for the difference between oil and coal. Okay, so while I'm doing that, I'm thinking about how they're made. How is oil made? How is coal made? And then how are they used? So how is oil used? What is it used for? And then how is coal used, or what is it used for? And those are really great places to look for differences between oil and coal. So I could start out my answer and say, one difference between oil and coal is, tell one difference between them. Another difference is that, and then you'll tell another difference. So the important thing here is that you're strengthening your answer by providing 2 reasons why they're different, so the reader of this answer knows that you know what you're talking about. Okay, this is a big question. Number 9, reading skill, compare and contrast. And then I'll move my head again. Whoop, there we go. All right, let's start over. Number 9, reading skill, compare and contrast. Consider what you have learned about renewable energy resources, like solar power. Compare solar power and natural gas. Explain the advantages and disadvantages of each. Wow, okay, that's a big question. So let's think about what's really important here to know while we're answering our question. So a lot of this, or some of it, we could take out, right? The consider part. Consider what you have learned about renewable energy resources like solar power. That's important for us to do, but it's not going to help us answer our question. So what we're really looking for here is to compare solar power and natural gas. The second part is to explain the advantages and disadvantages of each. Okay, so first part, compare and contrast. Second, explain. Let's focus on part 1 right now. So while we're comparing and contrasting, that means we're considering how they're similar and how they're different. So let's think. Similar and different. Are they renewable? Are they both renewable? Are they both non-renewable? How are they made? How are they used? So again, big question here. We have to think about that. And again, you can pause at any time if you need to think for a second. Okay, the second part of our question is asking us to explain the advantages and disadvantages of each. So we're thinking here, what are the benefits of solar power? What are the benefits of natural gas? And then what are the setbacks of solar power? What are the setbacks of natural gas? Okay, so this is a big question. Let's go back for a second. This is a big question. You only have, I think it's 3 lines to answer this question in your packet. You can absolutely use extra paper if you're feeling like your answer is getting a little long. That is totally fine. But in order to answer all parts of this question, our answer will be kind of long. So here's a sample of what you could say for this question. Move my head again. There we go. I keep moving around. Okay. All right, so again, this is long, but let's just talk through it, okay? So solar power and natural gas are similar because, and you'll give a similarity. So I've compared them. I've given a similarity. However, they are different because solar power, and then you'll tell one unique thing about solar power, but natural gas does something else. So you'll tell one unique thing about natural gas. So just so far, right here at this point, I have compared, I've told what's similar about them, and I've contrasted, I've told what's different. Now I have to explain the advantages and disadvantages. So I'm starting that right here. An advantage of using solar power is that, you'll tell me one advantage. And a disadvantage is that, you'll tell me one disadvantage. An advantage of using natural gas is that, you'll tell me an advantage. And then, but a different advantage, but a disadvantage is that, and then you'll tell me one disadvantage. So this isn't giving you the answer, it's just telling you a way that you could format your answer if you would like. So here, I want to also point out that in this passage, it doesn't really mention anything about solar power. So you're going to have to draw on what you know or what you've read in other passages to answer the question. But you can think about solar power the way you would think about other renewable resources. You know that it's renewable because it told you in the question. So you can use what you know about the differences between renewable and non-renewable resources to help you find the answer about solar power and natural gas. This is a big question, but again, we're here to help you if you do have other questions about it. Okay, so let's move on to number 10. That was a lot, so let's move on to a new one. Okay, critical thinking, predict what might happen when oil and natural gas run out. So here, you're making a prediction about what you think might happen when oil and natural gas run out. So, guess what? It's in the question. A helpful section for us to look at would be oil and natural gas, okay? So we're thinking what might happen when they run out. So some things that you can think about are, what are they used for? And then what might change if we didn't have access to these resources? Okay, 11. We're getting so close to the end. You're doing great. 11, inquiry skill, hypothesize. So you're making a hypothesis. What would happen if an area had increased erosion? So here I'm thinking about where I have already read about erosion in my passage. And I remember reading about erosion in the layers of soil section. So, and I also know that erosion impacts soil based on my prior knowledge. So a helpful section for me to look at would be layers of soil. And then from there, we can think about what does not happen when erosion increases, or what does happen when erosion increases. How does that affect the soil? How is soil used as a resource? What does that help? What does that do? And then how would it impact the world around us if erosion was happening, or increased erosion was happening? So how would that affect the soil? And how does soil impact us? How do we use that day to day? All right, our last question. Congratulations, you made it this far. Number 12, test prep. Which is a non-renewable resource? Plants, water, soil, or sunlight? So I'm thinking about what have I read about in my passage that tells me, that has told me it is a non-renewable resource. Okay, so I've read all about what are they? What are my non-renewable resources? I know that it's probably not plants. I haven't read about that. It's probably not water, because I haven't read about that either. I have read about soil as a non-renewable resource, but I haven't read about sunlight. So, friends, here, we know we've read about soil. So yes, soil would be the non-renewable resource. All right. We made it. We did it. That's it. So good luck answering these questions. If you already watched the video, you can always go back and watch it again, or pause if you need to. If you need help, there is my email. You're welcome to contact me with questions. Of course, you can always contact your classroom teacher too, or Miss Pinniger, and we will be happy to help you where we can. So we missed you all. We hope you have a great day and have fun answering these questions.